Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel. Where we left off was I hadn't received the servo that I was planning to use with this kit yet. It's a Savox Digital SC-1257TG. This is a high-speed servo, coreless motor, all metal, reasonably high torque, great servo. Always been a fan of Savox and I've had great luck with them. I've got them in most of my cars. So, we left off on having completed step 22, and I had bypassed 21. I'm just going to go ahead and do that real quick. That's our front bumper, and basically that just slides on like that. Let me find the plastic piece we need for that. That is D4. Which I have right here. D4 just kind of snaps into place here. And yeah, there's two screws, 3x10s. And those are not countersunk. And they are also not in here. I need to open another bag. If you get to a point and you don't find the screw you're looking for in the bag you thought it was in, sometimes these screws are kind of spread around through different bags. Just keep opening bags till you find it, sort of. On some of these kits, I have literally just opened every single bag with hardware, put it all in one big tray, and then just build through as you go, you know, finding the screws that you need as you need them. Because you are going to end up with spares. There are always extras. Sometimes because these kits are set up to run multiple bodies, different cars, and so you may not, you're definitely not going to need all of them. So, 2 3x10s. There we go. And those are best using the number 2 Tamiya screwdriver, which is the larger. Forgive me, I'm kind of getting back to this build. I had to wait on that servo, and so while I was waiting, I got busy on another build, which was consequently another Tamiya kit, the F104 Pro 2. It's a Formula 1 car. And videos for that will be coming out shortly if you're interested in that car as well. Now remember, this is a very soft plastic, and long before you really feel it bottom out, you're almost in danger of stripping, so do not over tighten these, because they will pull the threads right out of the plastic. Okay, so that's done. Our next step should involve servo mounting. Yeah, we've got to figure out our servo saver. So now what we need is a servo tester. Hope you have one of these. If you don't, just use the method they use in the instructions, where you plug in your receiver and use your transmitter to center it out. Either way will work fine. Basically what we're doing here is we're just making sure that the servo is always good to test it, especially a new servo, nice and smooth. Push the center button, unplug it, done. These are a very handy item. They're like $10 to $14, depending on where you find them. So now we need the correct servo saver or servo arm. Let's see, trim this out here. We've got a couple of these little base rings that attach directly to the servo. And let's see, this is the, it says Tamiya Futaba. That may not work for this. Yep, it does just fine. So it's a matter of how many splines there are. That looks a little off center. Now, if it is off center, don't worry about it, because you can adjust that in your radio. These things aren't always 100% lined up from the factory. Okay, you see, it's a little off, and it could be a little, it's like one spline to either side. So just get it as close to center as you can, and then tune that out in your radio settings. So now we need this round piece here, which is P5. That's basically the spring for the servo saver, and then our servo arm. And we are supposed to use P1, which is this little washer here. Okay, so now that we have all these pieces out, our servo is going to be oriented in this position over here. So now we put the spring on here. It just basically snaps on over this little notch right there, like that. And now the servo arm. Okay, so that's upside down. So we need to point this pin downwards. My mistake. So again, try to center that, you know, up and down as best you can. Okay, that's pretty close to vertical. Put our spring on. And then our servo arm. And now that I've moved this around a little bit, I'm just going to retest, make sure I'm at or near the center point. Okay, there we are. That's pretty dialed into center right there. So now we can put this washer in place, and I should be able to fit the little lock washer that comes with the Savox screw. Okay, that's something you definitely want to screw down solid. You're doing metal into metal, so it's unlikely to strip. I mean, don't go crazy, but definitely make it tight. Okay, so now we need our, that is P6, which is the steering linkage. And we're all done with that tree, so that goes in the trash. So, okay, we're going to need these two pieces. We're going to need these two screws. They call these MC2s. They have like a washer built into the head of the Phillips head. Those are for connecting our servo with these two blocks here. These are A4s, and these are a much harder plastic. So that's all I need. Let's see. Okay, we need a couple of these. These are similar to the, or identical to the ones that we attached our steering linkages down here. These have these bushings built in. So make sure you align this correctly. We need this with the little Z-bend going in that direction. So that's going to attach to our linkages there, and then this arm to our servo. Just tighten that down till it stops, because that bushing is gonna bottom out here before this gets tight, and you don't want it to be tight. You want a nice bit of action there. So now we are gonna screw the other end of that linkage onto our servo saver. Okay, now we need to attach these two. You want to have this little cutaway. You see there's a flat surface here. The surface has a little indentation. The indentation faces to the rear of the servo, so the flat side faces forward. And it's probably easier to, well, no, it's probably not. You can't start those. I was about to say, some screws are thin enough that you can slide them through there. In this case, you cannot. Oh, thank you. Don't you love it when the magnetic screwdriver works against you? But it doesn't want to hold the screw either. Great. It's another place you want to make it good and tight. Again, this is a very hard plastic. You don't have to worry as much about it stripping. You can still do it, so use caution, but you definitely need it to be tight. And it is hard to drive these screws in because of the toughness of the plastic. Okay. So that was steps 24, and now we're on to 25. 25, we need 2 3x10 countersunk screws. That's 2 of these, and they may have dark ones for us. Sometimes they do, they do not in this case. So 2 3x10s. And then we need 2 more of the screws with the bushings built into them. Sorry. Those are the 4 we need right now. Let's go ahead and start by mounting the servo. And then we'll attach the linkages. So if you notice, there are two little upright pieces here and here. Those are going to go in front of the servo, so just slide the servo in against them like that. Hold it with your thumb, flip the chassis over, get your screws started. And now we can attach our linkages. That is odd. Ah, I did it backwards, my bad. I've got the Z-bend going in the wrong direction. Thought I had that right. No problem. I must have just had that wrong when I flipped it over. Okay. Okay, that's gonna be perfect. Sorry about bouncing the camera. And I did it again. It is hard to work like this, because I've literally got a camera on an arm right over top of me here. So now you just attach the crossbar to the two steering arms, or rocker arms. And remember, you don't need to overly tighten them, just till that bushing touches down. Okay, there's our steering linkage set up. So we have one more thing to do on step 25, and well, a couple things. We want to get our speed control in position. Got a lot of paperwork in multiple languages. Feel free to read it at your leisure. But there are things we need to know right away. For example, which wires connect to what? Because we have 3 motor wires, as if this is for a brushless motor, and it can handle a brushless motor. Or in our case, we are using brushed motors, and we have to do it this way. So we need to go ahead and assemble this in the correct order. So we have yellow and green coming off our motor, and yellow and blue and orange. And if you look in the directions, they will tell you which ones to use for which. So in this case, they're showing a brushless motor, and let's see, it must be on the inner section. Okay, right here. Connection, brushless motor, and you know, they have the colors there, and connection to a brushed motor, we're going to use blue is our negative wire, and yellow is our positive wire. Orange is not used. Do not cut it off, okay? And you might say, hey, I've got all this extra wire here, maybe I should, you know, shorten these wires and solder stuff together. If you plan to race this in the stock class, if that's even a thought that you may want to race this, cutting the wires is a violation. You are not allowed to modify this in any way. So, you know, you might say, hey, I could take, you know, 2 inches off the battery connection. Can't do it. I could take several, you know, 3 inches off here, easy. Can't do it. Just roll it up and, you know, plug them in, tie the excess off. Same thing with the orange wire. You can't cut that off. You have to leave that. What I did when I built my first one was just roll the wires up, tie them off with a zip tie, and then same thing, kind of roll these around and plug them in. And, you know, there's various ways of tying those wires down, anchoring them, but that's how you basically want to do it. And then we need to mount our switch down here. Make sure that you keep track of what is on, what is off. Off is away from the wire, and you want off. They have it facing away. You might think that something could bounce up on the track and flip your switch off. It's highly unlikely. It's very recessed. Nothing is going to reach it. I haven't experienced any problem with that. I haven't heard of anyone experiencing any problem with that. And personally, I like having the switch down here. It makes it easy to just lift the truck off and turn things off. I am at this time going to pause for a minute. I'm going to take my motor back out, and I am going to do a break-in process on this motor. It involves running the motor in water. Kind of sounds like a ridiculous thing when you're dealing with electricity, but if you I'll try to put a video up of this. If not, there are lots of videos about how to properly break in the 540 can motors, and all of them involve basically dunking it in water and running it at various speeds, and doing that for some period of time to run in the brushes. And you'll probably want to change the water several times along the way. It gets pretty vile because there's usually a lot of junk in there from the construction process. Now, if you did want to shorten your servo wire, that's up to you. This particular servo has an awful lot of wire on it, but I'm just going to ball that up and tie it up. Okay, fairly simplistic stuff here. Just doing a little two-sided tape. Now, one thing you can do is swap out the connector, but you got to cut it right at the Tamiya connector so that you're not, you know, overly altering the length of the wires. There's a decent amount of space in here. If you were running a shorty servo, you might have room for the receiver in the pan instead of on top of the servo. I'm mounting my ESC a little closer to the servo because I want room to coil up the cables and kind of stash them down this way. And then the receiver is just going to get mounted right there after I wind up the wires a bit. So now we need to put on this retainer here, this top deck, and that is going to these two barrels here are going to cap off our they're like aluminum standoffs that the steering arms slide down onto, because if you've noticed all this time, they've just kind of been sitting there with nothing holding them down. This does that, and the reason that the long grub screws were screwed into a specific depth was to allow room in this threaded barrel for screws to come in from above. Now also, I only put those temp screws back here, and I never put any in up front here on the suspension, is because this is going to attach there. That's why they don't have you put those screws in right away. But like I said, having a couple of them in just for holding purposes while you're moving stuff around isn't a problem either. Oh, and before we anchor this down, we need our, and that may have been a bad move. Let me see. No, that's fine. The wires go right under there. That's okay. Just tuck those out to the side and these out to the side. And it's nowhere near the heat sink. Okay, good. Let's see. This piece really, not sure where that's going to go right now. Just a moment. Okay. Number 9 on the D tree. Sorry, I had a few things going on here while I was doing the motor. So this is for our antenna. We need a countersink 3x8. There we go. Okay, so there's our hole for the 3x8. It's probably a good time now to at least route the antenna wire part of the way, because once this is on top, it's hard to get underneath there to run the wire. So it's also probably a good idea to anchor this down now. So let's see. Now let me just pull this out. Okay. See how that's gonna go. Okay, so steering servo. Always check the direction on your servos. Make sure your ground is facing to the negative side. Decide how I want to do this. That'll work. Okay. Remember, there's a huge body that goes on here, so getting everything as neat and tight as you can is of no benefit whatsoever. In fact, you're most likely just creating a heat issue. So, I'm just going to use some of the, nah, I don't want to do that. I don't want it too close to that heat sink. That should work just fine. Yep, that'll work great. So, just need to trim off some of this two-sided tape here. That's a good length. Okay. Okay, then I just need to coil these guys up here. Let's go ahead and anchor the deck. So, let's see. 3x15s, and those are not going to be a self-tapping screw. That's these guys right here. These are going to screw down into those aluminum standoffs that are holding our steering arms. And they screw in really easy. If it starts to, like, it feels like it's going to bind a bit, just back it off about a turn and then go back in again. You don't want to cross thread those. If it doesn't screw in easily, you're doing it wrong. And again, you don't have to crazy tighten those down. They're just holding our steering in place. Okay, so then we need 3x15 self-tapping. Okay, so here's what we got. For the two front holes that we haven't filled in, we need a pair of 3x15s self-tapping. Those are these dark colored screws right here. Okay, and then for the rear, we need a pair of 3x8s and a pair of 3x12s. The 3x8s go in the forward two ones, 3x12s in the rear. So that's what these are going to look like. Those are our 12s, those are our 8s. And see, this is all very nicely engineered, the way the, you know, these various pieces hold each other down. Like these two 3x15s hold down the front to rear brace. They hold down the suspension upper bracket, and they also serve to mount the, they are anchored to the differential housing. Remember, don't over tighten and strip these, just get them good and snug. 3x8s in front, 3x12s in the back. Okay, now we need our motor shield, which is right here. Let me just set this out of the way. Okay, now this piece right here anchors to these two holes, but we're not using it for anything. It really doesn't apply to this kit, so I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm not even 100% sure what that was for originally. So now I'm gonna remove this screw. And it's interesting that they actually tell us to pull that screw out and swap it for that screw. see, they say attaching D6, but they don't tell us anything about what it's for. And like I said, I've already built one of these. There was no use for it. It doesn't have anything to do with mounting the body or anything, so I'm not going to bother with it. Now, another thing is the rules, the official rules for USA club racing for these trucks say that we can put one fan on the motor, but with this thing in the way, it's kind of hard to do, and they don't really tell us why. Also, I need to put the switch in here. I'm going to do that before I go forward. Let's go back. We're still in 25, so I need a couple of washers and some 2x10. Those are these really teeny ones. Not that one, that's self-tapping. There we go. 1, 2, washer, and washer. Right there. Now, we don't necessarily have to use this hardware because the screw already has hardware and a plate. Let's see. Small Phillips. And again, remember to pay attention to the orientation of the switch. On is towards the wires, and you want to make sure you match that up with the little sticker over here. So we already have 2x10 millimeter screws, and we can use the plate as opposed to the washer. It's our choice. I like the plate because this is a larger hole and it kind of covers that. So off is to the rear. So I am going to kind of bundle up the excess wire here and zip tie it. Or maybe just run it around the back here. Yeah, that'll work. Route it behind the ESC. Tuck these wires so they are out of the way while I'm working here. So I'm still going to need to bundle up a little bit of it, but that looks like it's enough. When you're using these zip ties, don't cinch them down like crazy tight. You don't want to damage the wires. You're just trying to anchor stuff to keep it from running amok on you. So, yeah, that looks pretty good. I could probably push a little through here and here. There we go. And they also have it on and off, on the switch, just to make sure you know which way you're orienting. You see how there's that big gap there? That's one thing about this nice little plate, is it kind of fills that in a bit. So there we go. Again, don't crank them down too tight. The on-off panel there is a very soft plastic. So we can save these 2x10s for future reference. And I bought a motor fan, cooling fan, and I'm not exactly sure how I'm gonna do this, because the rules say you're not allowed to cut or alter the chassis. It doesn't mean you can't drill a couple holes in it, but cutting away pieces of it would be another story. Now the problem with this one is it has this motor bracket that you would have to put around the motor. I assume that we would have, there's a little tab there, we'd have to take the motor off, put these on, and that would help blow some air into the motor, but it's going to be the same issue of having to alter this, because once we place this little guard over the motor, you know, we don't really have any place to put these or the fan. Now, one thing I've been thinking about doing is attaching the fan here. Just push that down in there. Putting the fan like this, so that it can blow air onto the heat sink for the speed control, and onto the you know, into the back of the motor area. I haven't heard anyone really complaining about overheating. I mean, we are running outdoors this time of year and it's pretty cold. I'm gonna think about it and maybe come up with a plan for that, but I don't think I'm gonna put it on right now. Okay, so screws for the motor shroud is a 3x10 and a 3x12, and the 3x10 is not a tapping, it's an MC5, which is a regular bolt, like this versus something like this. So we need a 3x12, which is right here, and here is a 3x10. Okay, that concludes steps 25. So it's a lot of steps, and we're pretty much wrapping things up. You'll need to glue tires. I've already got glued tires, so I mean, that could be a video unto itself. Hopefully you understand what you're doing. Hopefully you've got some tire glue. If you don't just rely on regular CA. Regular CA dries far too fast, especially thin CA. You want a wheel glue, tire glue specifically, because they tend to be a lot slower, and that allows you time to get the tire, you know, seated properly, instead of having it just stick wherever it is, and then you've got a ruined wheel and tire. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click like and please subscribe to my channel.